Okay, welcome back to the second video in this short little trio of videos where we dive into this idea of the augmented universe, augmented reality, virtual reality, Jewish universe, this idea of bringing everything that we have anywhere in our history, in our books, in our stories, all that, into an actual virtual and augmented universe that you can traverse through time and space. This video we're going to dive into, we're going to take the scenario from last video and we're going to go into and explore it a bit more, and we're going to give a big angle through augmented reality. We're going to give a big focus on that. So just as a recap, last video we defined augmented reality and virtual reality and we explained the difference between them. For anyone that still is kind of trying to picture in their head and understand what is the difference or what is augmented reality, I highly encourage you to go watch my videos on my channel. They're under a concept shorts, couple videos I titled #2025. And the idea was, that same question was asked to me over the nearly decade that I've been in this field, where people were, what is augmented reality and what has it got to do with my life? So I answered that in quite a few short videos. I don't think there's anything more than 20 seconds. And I go through simple things day to day, controlling your speakers, controlling your light. Couple more, there's some interesting twists to things that people have never thought about, but there's one video where you turn dumb objects, like anything regular, a regular wooden block, into a smart object, into something that you can actually utilize, control, and do some cool things in the digital world. So check that one out. So that's for anyone that's still looking for the clarification on what augmented reality is. Highly encourage you to go watch those. And I'll try and link some of those videos down below. The next part, we looked into where this nugget of this idea, where did this seed come from? And we looked into the books and the Sfarim and different ways that you could use them. We dived into a couple examples, but as you go in, there are quite a lot more examples and a lot more things that you can do with this. I didn't go too crazy into it. I'm just giving the idea behind what a safer could look like if it was augmented and if you had everything laid out in front of you and any connection. Think of one small idea, think of like a hyperlink in a book. So you're reading a normal book, it's paper and nothing opens up. If you want to link to another source, you have to go up and get that document. So when you're on your computer, it's normal. You have a hyperlink, you click on it, you get taken to that page on the internet. So over here, imagine if you could hyperlink on a regular book. So if it says see source here, you can tap on that, and that source actually opens up digitally instead of you having to go get that book. And there's lots more, but we're not diving into that. Here we're going to pick up on this story where you dived into, where you were sucked into that scenario in the classroom, and you were part of the discussion, things like that. Most of that was taken in augmented reality, okay? So imagine if you go speak to the rabbi, and for some reason, in the entire, all the years that I was thinking about this idea, and every time it came to my head, this teacher, for whatever reason, was always Rabbi Akiva. And there are lots of things I don't know about his life. So I was wondering, imagine if I go up to him after class, speak to him, have a chat with him, and be able to take a walk down the roads of Jerusalem, outside the classroom, outside the building, wherever the classroom took place, and walk the cities of Jerusalem. Now, one really interesting thing is that I don't believe I went into, or I dived into very deeply in the last video, is this idea of having AR characters, AR agents. Think of today's Wikipedia, where people input a lot of information into a profile. Connect that with artificial intelligence and deep learning, and you get to a place where you can actually start having conversations with these characters, because all the information about them, any books that they read, any things that was written about them, all their information, all their commentaries, all their opinions, their character possibly, could all be uploaded into this AI profile, into this character that is not pre-recorded. You can actually have a conversation with them and ask them their opinion, ask them what they think about them. You can maybe walk down the street with him and go visit his house and maybe go speak to his wife. Rabbi Akiva's wife was in quite a few stories. We know quite a bit about her. And you could go have conversations. You could meet his kids. So I don't know how many kids he has, but maybe he did have a number, and I'm sure somewhere out there someone knows the answer. But if I went to his house and met his wife and sat down at dinner, I would also know the answer of how many kids, because they would just be there, right? His wife, I'd get to know. There would be a deeper connection that I could connect with, but behind her character is all the information that was ever written about her, anything that she shared, anything like that. So these characters are actually real. They're 3D, not just in the physical sense, but they've got character behind them. They've got all their information, history. It's a walking, talking biography. So I could walk down the streets now. Imagine I'm walking down the streets in VR, and I'm looking around and I'm able to see Jerusalem as it was back in those days. I can see the fields and the houses and everything like that. I can speak to, maybe we pass by some of his friends. Maybe we meet some other interesting characters or massive characters that we've learnt about. Bar Kochba was someone that had connections with Rabbi Akiva. I could go and meet him and speak to him. So it's an entire world that I not only just walking around and meeting one person, but I might be bumping into a bunch of other storylines, and I can explore them if I want. Now here's the interesting part. All of this was done in VR. So imagine if, let's say I'm at home in my bedroom, maybe I'm wearing my VR glasses and I'm experiencing all this, and maybe I happen to actually be living in Jerusalem at that time. At that time means right now, when I'm in VR, not at that time that I'm visiting with Rabbi Akiva. I could tell Rabbi Akiva, hold on one second, just wait here for 1 second. Maybe I dropped him off at Shayafo, right outside the old city walls. I take off my VR glasses, or I swap them into AR glasses. I hop in the light rail, go down to the old city, and now in augmented reality, as I'm walking down the real path, as I'm walking down that last path, down the steps, down that pathway towards Shayafo, I now see Rabbi Akiva in augmented reality, standing there waiting for me. What does this mean? I'm in the year 2022. I'm seeing everybody else who's there, all the tourists, anyone else walking around in today's world. But Rabbi Akiva, maybe as a hologram, all right, however he looks to you, he's there standing by the city gates as if he's really there. This is called augmented reality, right? So you're still in the world, but you're able to see that. And I can pick up that conversation that I had with him, and I can continue walking the streets, but now I am experiencing this all in augmented reality. Now, because it's an augmented reality, I'm no longer walking just the streets of old Jerusalem. I'm walking the streets of modern day Jerusalem, but I can also have twists, right? I can see landscapes, I can see buildings. I can even have some of the buildings from today kind of, maybe they're hidden by a fog or something. They can melt away to be replaced by what it was back in those days. But I'm walking the real streets. Now, there will be obviously safeguards in place that you don't wander into the road, that you don't walk into other people or buildings. There will be those safeguards in place, but you are walking today's streets of modern day Jerusalem, but seeing how it looked like back in those days. Maybe as the cars go by, if that is an ancient road, maybe my AR replaces those modern cars with camels or donkeys, and I see people that are going down this highway, right? So this gate, Shayafo, is actually called that because that road, that was the end of the road that led to Yafo, right? Just south of Tel Aviv. So I'm able to all that mapping. So I've met characters. I've got all their history, but I'm also seeing maps. Anything that we've generated, everything we've learned. One question that I had when I was imagining this was, when did Rabbi Akiva live? Did he live through any of the temples? And for me to understand, for me to know that, I have Google, that I could technically go read and maybe find his Wikipedia and scan through his profile and find out his timeline. But most places that we read in books or Wikipedia, I'm seeing a name, I'm seeing maybe dates of like when they were born, when they died, maybe sometimes when they live. And unless I'm studying a person in depth, because it's somewhat, or I'm a huge history buff in this in this time period, chances are I'm not going to be able to read and remember and understand who lived past who just reading through text, right? with augmented reality and virtual reality in this universe, as I'm walking around, when I meet a figure, I now know I've made a connection with Rabbi Kiva as the historical figure, not just text, not just books. And I've walked the streets and I've met those figures in real life. So I know, who lived at the same time period. Actually, last week when I was thinking of making this video, right, this is the video that is quite a few years in the making. I did a video last year, obviously in the first video, we talked about day 14. Anyone that's still looking for a link, I'm going to still try and link it up to the first video and I'll link it up. And over the years, I've spoken to many people, and shared it on podcasts and been interviewed with this. And this idea is just built and built. But that Rabbi Kiva information I didn't know as I was going on. It was just in my head as a sage. So last week when I was thinking about that, I was thinking about Rabbi Kiva and I was praying. Next to me, not that I was praying that there should be people next to me, next to me there were two people that were learning about Rabbi Kiva. And they were talking about his history, his time period that it was in. It was like super interesting. I was like, oh, I'm about to make this video. And here I am hearing actual information about Rabbi Kiva. So what I learned is he actually lived through the period of the Second Temple towards the end. He lived through the destruction, and he also lived through a temple that was erected to Jupiter. Now, this was something I never knew. It's something that probably most people don't know about. It was something that wasn't really mentioned in the Talmud because, if your temple is there, the Jewish temple, between the two temples and the 70-year gap between them, was nearly 1,000 years. They spanned quite a long time. To have been conquered and all that, and then have your temple replaced with another temple to a different religion is not something that you want to keep talking about or be reminded about. So it's not written about a lot, but there was a temple up there. So imagine if I'm walking with Rabbi Kiva, maybe I'm walking down the streets, maybe I'm already by the old city, maybe I've walked into the old city, but as I look towards the Temple Mount, I can see what's standing. So if I see that there's a temple, immediately if you were to ask me, was he alive during the temple? It's not something that I have to remember in a textbook because my eyes saw it, I experienced it. Yes, he was alive there. Or not only that, I could actually probably go through different periods of times in his life. So I could skim through, I could go back to when he was while he was a shepherd, or maybe 40 years old when things changed with the rock and the drip. Later on when he amassed 24,000 students, which was a story that was connected to Augmented that just happened last week. Or I could be there through the destruction or through Bar Kokhba that he actually supported. Or maybe later on, I could look there and I could see a strange looking temple and realize that that's the temple to Jupiter. And maybe I can go there and experience it and walk around and get a sense of it. But walking around, what I'm fascinated about this part of this universe is that there's questions and associations that we can't easily make through just text. We might read them in passing, but to remember them and to make those connections doesn't always happen. It doesn't happen for me all the time. But if I were walking and talking through ancient Jerusalem with one of the characters and having a conversation and making a connection with the character himself and learning a lot of things about him, and I happen to glance over and see the temple, it's almost, it could even be subconscious. I don't even have to think about it, but if someone were to ask me, was he alive during then? It would be there because I've experienced it. I've been in that time. It's a completely different paradigm to this world of just reading text or reading biographies. So that was just something that I was always super interested in. So here with AR, so we've got AI characters, right? All these characters have all the information from all the box. We can walk through the city as it was pristine during, in VR. We can switch over to AR if we happen to actually be in Jerusalem. We get to understand the time periods. We can scrub through different time periods of the sage's life or whoever we are with. We can move between them and see them as a young child. All this information that we have amassed through all our books, we can try kind of like visit these pivotal moments, or we can meet them on a regular day and have a regular conversation. We can see the city as it was then. We can see the city as it changed through time. And we get to experience that with characters. And remember, we can hop between timelines. So we can start speaking to a sage, walk down the street, meet one of his friends. We have a conversation. Then I can maybe continue that conversation with another character and go down a whole other timeline. So I can experience, I have unlimited potentials of what I want to experience that day. I don't know about you, but I used to live in Israel, and I like to walk around Jerusalem. It's a very beautiful city, especially during the rain. And I can't imagine well, I'm trying to imagine, I mean, I can imagine, but I'm trying to imagine like what it would be like if there's a day that you're walking around and your head's in the clouds, but imagine if you could turn on a piece of history, go into a specific time period, and be able to start conversing with the history that happened in that place, experiencing it, walk with it, meet the characters, and converse, and you can go through any time and anywhere that you happen to be walking. You can just, okay, right now I'm in space, so my space is locked, right? So I'm in augmented reality, not virtual reality. So I'm locked to a certain space, but I'm not locked via time. And now I can drill up and down the timeline. And that's what the next video is going to be. We're going to go into some cases and some scenarios of going through that timeline, not just in one character's lifetime, but actually through the entire history, and we'll see as we visit them, what are some interesting or cool things that we can do in those timelines, and who can we meet and what kind of angles we can see it from. Anyways, that's it for this video, and I'll see you guys in the future.